let's just take a moment and just look at the glory that is Winnie on a warm day. The breath is so hot. Oh, it feels good. The scritches feel so good. Is that enough? It's never enough, is it? It's never enough for Winnie's. Hi kids, welcome back to another pizza party. I'm Mrs. Pizza, that was Winnie. She's gonna go sit over by the window. That's actually why we're here, because it is such a beautiful day, and even though I usually record right in front of the window, there are too many dogs walking by. It's too glorious in the sunshine on this day for people to be inside with their dogs. So Winnie will not let me near the window, and it's probably going to be a bad idea if we sit there. She's gonna move the camera, she's gonna bark at something. I love you, but you're a lot. Cheese is in the cheese spot. If you watched any of my other videos, you know exactly where the cheese spot is. She's there, per usual. We are here today to do a recent reads. Why? Because if I wait too long, it's too many books and it's overwhelming. So I like to do this while it's a little bit short. So we are going to go through some of the books I've read recently and talk about them, because that's what I like to do. The first book we're going to talk about is The Salt Grows Heavy, and this is a very short fantasy horror novella. I picked this one up on audiobook from the library because it was short and it sounded like something that I would really, really enjoy. This is the story of a mermaid, and she has been married off to some prince king. He doesn't sound like a super great guy, but in the opening of the story, the mermaid's children have decimated the city that she lived in. As the revenge the mermaid is taking for being taken advantage of by these people, by this king and this kingdom and all of these people, she has unleashed her offspring onto this place, and they sound like monsters with incredibly sharp teeth, and they have just set on fire. They have eaten everyone. Everybody is gone. It is a whole thing. We are now in the aftermath of our mermaid's revenge. She cannot speak, and she has one person that has survived the onslaught of her children, and that is the plague doctor. These two, in the beginning of the story, you can tell have a little bit of a history, a connection to each other, and they decide to go off on an adventure together into the world where they might encounter other creepy things. This book felt like a fairy tale, but a very spooky, bloody, gory one. There was a lot of goopy, drippy, nasty horror that happened in this book. It was short. It was fine. I ended up giving this 3 stars. I enjoyed it for the most part. I think this author really likes words, and sometimes some of it felt a little bit overwritten for what we were dealing with. Instead of coming across beautiful and lyrical, it was just coming across wordy. And I didn't necessarily love the ending of this book, but I had no predictions about how it was going to end, and so I don't know how they could have ended it any differently. It's totally fine. The first thing I've ever picked up from this author, and I will definitely give them another try in the future. The next book I picked up after that was Ready Player One. This is a sci-fi pop culture classic. There is a movie, and that is the cover I have is the movie tie-in from, I think it was Steven Spielberg, right? Yeah, Steven Spielberg directed the movie that came out, but this is a YA dystopian sci-fi taking place in the not so distant future. This is the story of Wade Wilson, and he is a young man growing up in the leftovers of the world. Corporate takeover has just decimated everything. People have moved into cities because the land is just kind of ruined. Wade actually lives in the Stacks, which is a form of trailer park that they've kind of run out of room in these cities that are just completely overpopulated. And these areas that used to be the slums, now they stack trailers on top of each other in these stacks. So they've started to have to go vertically with how people are surviving. They just have to vertically stack these people on top of each other. The world is kind of a dire and sad place. There's one shining light in this horrible dystopian future, and that is the Oasis. It's a online virtual world that anyone can access, and you can be anything you want to be. There are thousands of planets and lands and cities within this virtual world. You could pick an avatar that is your favorite character from your favorite anime. You could hunt orcs with the characters from the Lord of the Rings. You could go shopping at some of the fanciest stores. You can drive spaceships and cars and Millennium Falcons, and it is a very idealized place. It is a great escape for all of these people living this horrible life. When one day the creator of the oasis passes away, he puts out a competition for the control of the oasis. So he basically makes these riddles and puzzles to have the people in the oasis compete with each other to solve these puzzles to gain access and control to the entirety of our online internet world. There is a big corporation who is gunning to win control of the oasis. And then we have Wade Wilson, who is absolutely obsessed with the oasis and its creator. And he's trying to figure out these puzzles in this virtual world with these virtual friends. This book was fine. I feel like this book itself is a love letter to the pop culture of the 70s and 80s. A lot of these references are things that went over my head because I was either too young when these things happened or they're just not things that I was ever in touch with. But I feel like if you are of that time or a super fan of those things, this would just be nostalgia bomb after nostalgia bomb. But the whole thing is basically deep diving into the creator of the oases. It's diving into his favorite things, and that's the time period he grew up in. He's a super fan of his own childhood, his own nostalgia, and that is what we're doing. We're just going down nostalgia lane with all of these characters, and all of the answers to all of the questions are having to do with something from this time period that was a pop culture reference. This was totally fine. I think, again, if you were of that time period and of YA age while reading this, it might have had a deeper impact, but it was totally fine. I'm not upset I read it, but I just only ended up giving it 3 stars. The next 2 things I read were short stories that came from this collection of short stories by Stephen King. This is Skeleton Crew. This is a first edition mass market paperback. This one is old as dirt. It smells like it too. It smells like an old book. But the first story in this short story collection is The Mist, another short story that was adapted into a movie. They are just like scraping the barrel trying to make every single Stephen King property adapted at some point into something. The Mist is the story of a man who is just an average kind of guy. He's got a wife and a kid, and they live on a house on a lake when one day a crazy storm shows up just out of nowhere. This giant storm knocks out power, knocks down trees, leaves these people feeling very isolated. The next morning when they wake up, it's just branches and leaves and trees everywhere. The power is out. And so this man takes it upon himself for him and his young child to travel into town to get word of what's going on, but to also stop at the grocery store to re-up on some supplies, seeing as how they're probably going to be cut off from things for a while. But there is something else that arrives with this storm that strands not only our main character and his child, but a lot of the other citizens of the town in this grocery store. And it just devolves from there. If you've seen the movie The Mist, this is different. Some of the changes that were made are for the better because Stephen King loves to make his male main characters, I don't know, the most sexually attractive, even though they're just average guys. I don't know. There's always some woman who just can't help herself, which is annoying, but also a product of its time and blah, blah, blah. But this is obviously about this mob mentality, this kind of group devolving and picking sides and making choices since they're all stranded and they can't reach out to the outside world. They don't know what's going on. It's dangerous. In the movie, the ending is very different from the short story, and I actually prefer the short story ending, but I could hear arguments for either or. I really enjoyed The Mist. It was surprisingly relevant to current day climates, is how I'll put it. I hope that's very vague, but you get what I'm getting at. There's lessons to still be learned from The Mist. I read a couple of the short stories in here as well, but the next one we're going to talk about is The Monkey. And the reason I read it is because the movie by Oz Perkins just came out, and it looks absolutely absurd. It looks like gory and funny at the exact same time. The story The Monkey is probably only about 30 some odd pages and is about a man. We find him in the beginning of the story going through the house of his recently deceased aunt, I believe it is, either his aunt or his uncle. And they were the people that raised him and his brother. Due to tragedies that befell the family when he and his brother were young, they moved him with the aunt and uncle. The aunt and uncle have now passed away, and while cleaning out the house, they find the monkey. We then flash back to the first time this man encountered the monkey, which is this harbinger of death. Every time the monkey clinks its cymbals together, someone dies. But in the story, you were unsure if this man is misremembering this because he was a child going through traumatic things, or if this monkey really is this evil entity that he sees it as. We then get the story, even though this is very short, of him as a child dealing with the monkey, him as an adult dealing with the monkey. There's not much to go on there, and so I'm interested to see how the movie differs. I'm assuming this is just going to be a jumping off point, and then they will flesh out the story a little bit more. The next book we're going to talk about is Mickey 7. This I also picked up because the movie Mickey 17 is coming out very soon, and this sounded like something I might enjoy. This is a sci-fi story taking place in a futuristic world where Earth was destroyed and humanity has sent its masses out into space. And so how this works is a group decides to send out a colony. A ship is packed up with basically a small crew of people to get the ship there, and then the rest of the colony is embryos. So there's a very skeleton crew type group of people that are actually going to start the colony, and then they'll start popping out babies to be the actual population. In this skeleton crew, there is obviously a necessity for people to have very specific jobs. They have pilots and terraformers, biologists, all kinds of scientists. Obviously, there's someone in charge, but they need to have an expendable. And what an expendable is someone that has their consciousness downloaded into some sort of cloud type thing, and then their DNA input into a computer so that a really high-tech 3D printer can spit out a new version of them with all of their memories whenever they need it. They're a person who can be printed out whenever they die. There are specific rules surrounding being an expendable, like you can only have one version of a person at a time, and they have to download their consciousness to make sure they're updating all of their memories just in case they die and they need to print out a new version. In this story, Mickey has signed on to be our expendable. Unfortunately for him, he can be brought back to life, and it's a lot cheaper to just print out a new version of Mickey than it is to find a new machine or the parts they need out in the middle of space. They've recently landed on the planet that they were going to put a colony on. It's a little less hospitable than they thought it would be, and Mickey is having to deal with the fact that he's having an identity crisis because he is now the 7th version of Mickey, and how much of him is really left since they've just been printing out new versions. This is funny, it's very satirical, and it's a really fast read. Mickey is not a perfect person. I liked that no one in this story is perfect. No one's like a shining example of humanity. Everybody has flaws, some more than others. Everybody has beliefs, and Mickey is really going through it, trying to just figure out his place, his purpose, and what he really needs to be doing on this colony. I liked Mickey 7. I think I would definitely watch the movie of this because I know that they added a 1 in front of the 7. They're going to kill Mickey off a bunch more times than they did in this book. It's hard watching Mickey die because they definitely don't spare you, at least the ones that Mickey remembers, because if he doesn't have time to download it, he's not going to remember what it was like to die. This is interesting, and there's a lot of philosophical questions around just being able to print out a brand new version of yourself. The next book I picked up after that was A Dark and Secret Magic. I felt like I needed something a little bit witchy, romancy, rom-com-y, and so this was available from the library and I picked it up. This is the story of Hecate, or Kate, as they call her, and she is a witch. She has been named the hedge witch, I believe is what it was, of her coven. In this world, in specifically Kate's coven, you have to pick a very specific path as a witch, a very specific magic, and on your 30th birthday, all other forms of magic are removed from you so that you can focus on your one true magic. Kate's magic is as a hedge witch, and this is very important in that not only was she not really 100% able to make her own decision in this, it was something that was pushed upon her by her mother, but also she is the first hedge witch in her coven in a very, very, like hundreds of years. They have been without one, and she has healing powers and things like that. So in the opening of this story, she's feeling very lonely. She lives a very secluded life in her little cabin with her cat. She works at a bookstore. She has several friends, but there's not much to her life. She lives a very simplistic day-to-day in her small town with her coven. When through circumstances. There seems to be an upset happening within the coven. There's some ritualistic holiday coming up. She has to host a big party with her sisters that one she gets along with, one is a little bit more prickly. This is the first time they're celebrating since her mother passed away, and she's still reeling from that. When someone who she has a past with shows up at her door and throws everything else into a tailspin, and his name is Matthew, and we learn quickly what the history is between these two characters as we go on a cozy-ish adventure trying to figure out the magic and why Matthew is here and the coven keeping secrets. This was an okay, good time. It said it was like practical magic, Persephone and Hades inspired story. And though those elements were there, none of them were very strong. I think those were buzzwords to like lure the right witchy romance people in. This is definitely not like high spice, super sexy witchy. This is much more like cozy, small town witchy. I will say I was getting unbelievably irritated by the fact that every single character in this book was keeping secrets. I'm pretty sure the cat was keeping secrets. Like everything had a secret that they were not divulging to our main character. The main character and our love interest were the only ones that I felt that not only the secrets they were keeping, but why they were keeping them made any sense. Everyone else, it was just infuriating. And I was just so over it because every time we met a new person, I was like, oh great, I bet they've got a secret that we need to know about that they refuse to tell us. It was a little bit irritating, but overall a cozy witchy rom-com and totally fine. I'm not mad that I picked up this one. And the last book we're going to talk about is We Spread. This book is something I picked up because I'm interested in reading from this author. I have seen the movie for their book. I'm thinking of Ending Things, I think is what it's called. And it's odd and weird and creepy and sad. And I was thinking this was probably going to be about the same. I ended up liking this okay, but I honestly feel like maybe I'm just too dumb for this book. There was things that I think I just didn't necessarily pick up on. This is the story of Penny, and she's an artist, and she's elderly. She lives alone, and she previously was in a long-term relationship with someone who has also passed away. He was an artist, and he was very successful and renowned. But now Penny is alone, she lives a solitary life, and she's starting to have lapses in memory. When finally an accident causes the people around her to send Penny to a retirement home, it has already been set up previously that she will go to. So the bills have been paid, the I almost said we dotted the T's and crossed the I's. We could do that if we wanted to. Penny is sent to this very secluded place with a small group of elderly people and this strange caretaker / owner and one other person. This is very surreal. There's a lot of things that are happening that you are unsure of, but also Penny is unsure of. She's having lapses in memory. She's kind of deteriorating. And so in the book, you feel that way as well. When we start getting suspicious about what's happening in this place that we've been sent to, some of the people that are there, what's happening to us, what's happening to them, that's kind of where the creepiness comes from. The ending is very ambiguous, and I think that this is something that will be a little bit more hard-hitting if you are someone that has a friend or family member that has memory issues, because this does a lot of imagery and talking about people with dementia, Alzheimer's, memory care situations. And those were very sad. This book is very sad. This book is very somber. It's very surreal. And even though I enjoyed it, I don't necessarily know if I understood it, but the imagery worked for the most part. There's just a lot of things that are uncanny and off that really will creep you out in this. But I wouldn't say this is necessarily scary. It's just creepy. I don't know. I'll probably pick more up from this author because even though I don't know if I'm smart enough for their books, I still want to keep trying. But that, kids, is where we are going to stop this recent reads because that's plenty of books and I'm tired of talking. And neither one of the dogs has really hung out with me because it's so pretty outside. I can tell that they're both outside sunbathing right now. So I'm going to go enjoy some sunshine myself. But if you had fun hanging out with me and the dogs, please subscribe. I hope you're reading good books out there wherever you are. And I'll see you next time. Hi, Cheesy. Oh, you're warm from being outside, huh?